While at Saddleback College, I changed positions probably 7 times. And during that time, I started off as the vocational assessment coordinator. My job was to come in and set up a vocational assessment center. And that center, it was a grant-funded position that the grant had been written by some of the counselors. And our focus was to provide vocational assessment not only to our students here at Saddleback College, but also within our district. So we were at high schools, we were at shopping centers, we were at other community events. And in order to do that, we had to have a mobile assessment center. I worked with an outside consultant, and we actually designed the interior of a motorhome. And I think it's like a 30-foot motorhome. I can't remember exactly what. But in that motorhome, we were able to bolt an assessment instrument that we call an Apticom. It's a very large instrument that did the vocational assessment, looked at aptitudes and things of this nature. We also had chairs in there to do and desks to do what we call paper pencil testing, and also vocational counseling. We had the computers on there. In fact, it was a fully working mobile assessment center. The only thing in the design that we would probably do differently is that we actually included the bathroom in there. We learned when we came on campus with this unit that the transportation people started talking about gray waters and some other kind of water. Well, I had never had any experience with a motorhome, so I didn't know anything about gray water. We ended up using that bathroom as a storage area and not needing to use it for its main purpose. But that was fun. That's a fun thing to do. Driving that from in different parts of the district all the way to Tustin, for example. We were parked at San Clemente High School providing services, over at Irvine Valley College. So it was really a nice mobile unit. And I did that for about 3 years. The grant lasted for about 5 years. But after that 3rd year, I continued to coordinate the program, but I applied for a permanent full-time tenure track position at Saddleback, and I got that position. It was really funny. That's generalist counseling. It's really funny that because the day that I received my contract from the district saying that I had gotten the position and this was my contract, I also received a letter from then President Constant Curl congratulating me on my tenure. I did not know, and I guess other people did not know, that because I'd been full-time those 3 years and all my evaluations were included in that I was then qualified for a tenure track, and I didn't even need to apply for that position that I applied for. I could have asked for it as a lateral transfer. But those are experiences that I had, that at that time, the worst way to interview is to interview with people that you work with for a long time. We tell everyone that if you ever want to have a really easy interview with strangers. If you want to have a difficult one, try interviewing with people that you've worked with for 3 years. They kind of know you at that point. But it was a fun experience though. But then I was in that position for a while, and I was asked to go on reassignment. I went reassignment to the district, and that position was staff diversity coordinator. My duties at that time were to set up a program where we were out recruiting women and minorities for positions throughout the district. When I say for positions, I really meant that those positions would be for candidates to get into the candidate pool for positions at the college, at the district, and at Irvine Valley College. And I did that for the duration of that assignment. While doing that, I was able to write 3 other positions. One position was for a permanent staff diversity coordinator or director. I can remember now what the board finally decided as to the title. And then a position for staff diversity officer at Irvine Valley College and for the staff diversity officer at Saddleback College. And I assumed that position for a short time at Saddleback College. And we went and hired a person at the district level. And that was nice. It afforded me an opportunity to do a lot of travel, to recruit students, get to learn more multicultural knowledge as to what different cultures were looking at when they look at different positions, especially being in South Orange County. So that was experience. I also got to find out that people in other states did not necessarily think this was the greatest place to come to work, even though our salaries were a lot higher. Living costs were so high that oftentimes we would lose a candidate because they couldn't afford the housing, even though the salaries were much better than what they had where they were. I would say that most of our successes were in women. The number of women that we hired at Saddleback College got to a point where we were almost half and half with women and with men. That was back then. I don't know if that still holds today. I have a feeling that it does not. I know that the people of color that we were able to successfully recruit and hire, that number has definitely diminished over the years. In fact, the joke in our area was that we were the training ground for people of color to go on to other higher positions, presidents and deans and vice presidents and the like. And that was good. You know, that was their aspiration to go on. Saddleback was a good training place. And then after that, I went back to counseling, where I was able to do generalist counseling as well as start teaching the applied psychology classes, and I taught a number of classes over the years in that counseling area. I think one of the happiest times that I had as also was the most challenging, it was the most frustrating, it was the most demanding, and any other adjectives you can add to that was when I was asked to do athletic counseling. Saddleback College has, and always has had, a very successful and large program for athletes, both men and for women. And what the state required for those students to be able to play locally at the community college level, and then what organizations such as the NCAA and the NAIA required for those same student athletes to be able to participate in sports at the university level required a lot of knowledge. There were a lot of rules involved. So my job as an athletic counselor was to assist students in knowing what those rules were and being able to stay within those perimeters so that they would be qualified as to be able to participate in athletics. At the same time, they had to meet the requirements in order to meet admission requirements for those universities. At one time, it was thought that student athletes did not have to meet admission requirements at the universities. Well, more and more, it has become that in some cases, they are required to do more than some students in order to meet the requirements. And when you think about it, they are on a time clock. Other students were not on a time clock. If you're not a student athlete, you can take your time in deciding on what major you wanted. You can take your time and maybe go to school part-time. Student athletes could not do that. They had to at least know that what they were going to major in by the end of the first semester. They had to be full-time in order to participate in sports. So there was a lot of demanding with them. And I did that for about 14 years. And every spring, it was like your you get this panic, almost a panic attack, when student athletes are filing for the associate's degree, even though you have already done the pre-check until admissions and record says yes and stamps it on that transcript. They don't have it. They could not play at the next level without that associate's degree. And so it was always during that spring time when all of everything was getting done and grades were being submitted and applications submitted, that you had to just kind of hold your breath, and then when that stamp was on there and that student was transferring to the University of Utah or to UCLA and other schools where they were going to be able to meet admission requirements, so they got in and they were given a scholarship that would pay for the rest of their education. So over the years, again, I said that was one of, with all of the frustration and the breath, the holding of your breath and all that goes along with that, it was still one of the most rewarding of my experiences at Saddleback College as being an athletic counselor. Probably the last 6 years that I was at Saddleback College as a full-timer, that year I was asked to take over the coordination of the matriculation program. Our matriculation coordinator had gotten a dean's position in another college district, and there was a void there, so they were trying to fill that void. And I jokingly tell my dean, Geraldine Kuhlman, that when she was asking for the counselors if anyone would step up and take that over until they could hire someone permanently in the position, that I must have looked up because everyone else was looking down. And so I got picked for that. But for about 5 years, I was the matriculation coordinator. And as is the case today, matriculation statewide had a lot of changes going on. And it's hard to set up a program when there's so much change all the time. There's a lot of work for the staff, but I had a fantastic group of people working with me in matriculation that made my job so much easier. These were people, I call them the dream team, because they would come in and the state would give us a regulation or something that we needed to add. And we said, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to present it to the students? And they would say, well, we can't do that. That's impossible. We can't do that. And I would say, I know you can. And they were the kind of people that they come back the next day and they've worked out a way to do it. So what do you think if we do it this way? And that was, like I said, the best type of people to work with, because students, when it comes to testing, they're already have a little bit of concern and a little bit of hesitation about wanting to test. And with matriculation, students would have to come in and they would have to do the testing in English, math, and reading. They would also have to do an orientation, and they would also have to do the advisement session. So one of the things we did do, we were able to put the orientation and the advisement online. Mm-hmm. So we worked with a consultant and set up a way to do that, where students would just be able to go online and get those two things done, and that only left them with having to come on site to do the testing. And that was another one of the areas that that dream team was able. They worked on along with counselors. We had a committee set to say, how do we go to set up this orientation and also the advisement session online. Mm-hmm. And we were, as throughout the state, they used us as one of the models on how to do that, and looked at our orientation. I must say, before then, the counselors were doing a fantastic job of doing orientation on campus, where the students would do their assessment and then they would come in for almost a 2.5-hour session with the counselor in a group format. And like high school, these were right out of high school, and like most high school students do, you're going to lose them after so long. And so we knew that we were losing them. We needed to come up with another way to do it that was going to hold their attention a little bit more. And they're all into technology and anything that's audio, visual type thing. So it worked out really well that we were able to do that.
Let's see, 1969 to 1989. 98, excuse me. 98, yeah.
So 31?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, long time. But good years.
Yes.
Yeah. In the U.S. history and physical anthropology, those two. And then as years went by, we hired a very good staff. And as they came along, I let them have the really good class in U.S. history where you have a paper and that sort of thing. And I took the History 22, which is the large section. It didn't transfer, I don't know if it does now, but it did not transfer to the university level. So I assumed that these are people who, this may be their last educational experience. Let's make it as interesting as possible, but not as difficult as a regular U.S. history class would be.
One of the things that happened over the years is that while I was always associated in some way with the radio station, what I did with the station and what I did with the department was constantly changing. And that was one of the reasons I think that I was able to survive so long, mentally at least. Back in those days, in the early days, as the station kind of grew as an NPR station, I went from being a production assistant to the executive producer of a news magazine show and news director of the station. And then in 1984, the Board of Trustees decided to get rid of the NPR affiliation, essentially lay off the entire staff, except for me, and transition the station into a co-curricular operation within what was then the Communication Arts Department. And so my whole role and the people I was working with changed at that point. And then over the years, the position evolved from being a news director that worked with students. Then I became a part-time faculty member and kind of maxed out many hours I was teaching. So I was teaching 2 or 3 classes sometimes, some semesters. Evolved to program director of the station, evolved to manager of the station, and eventually, in my last 2 years, I oversaw the staff and operations of also the TV station as well.
I don't know if you remember Chancellor Lombardi.
I know the name.
Okay, he was the chancellor of the district. Bill Jay was the president of the college, and in their best interest, they thought it was a good idea to hire me on the instruction side instead of the EOPS, because EOPS was categorical funding. The continuation of the job was based upon there being funds from the federal government. Whereas with the college and the district, there were funds built in, and so it was more of a tenure-track permanent position. And I have to say, I think that the decision to do that was also based upon the lawsuit I just mentioned earlier. Absolutely, I was doing teaching political science and history. My other roles on the college campus are numerous. I think I'll talk about 2 things. First of all, extracurricular activity for the students. I've served as a faculty advisor for student clubs, many organizations, taking students to Model United Nations competition. All kinds of things like that are very rewarding to the students and rewarding to myself. Most of the stuff I've done to benefit students, but also as far as the faculty leadership, I've gotten involved in faculty leadership. I was a former Academic Senate president, former union president, chief negotiator, curriculum chairperson. So I've done all these things because, as you know, we are expected not only teach, but get involved in the college community. So those were some of my activities as far as the college community.